A rift has begun to emerge between the United States and Israel regarding their stance on the war against Iran. It turned out that the goals of the war are different, so it's unclear what exactly can be called a victory. American officials insist that right now the United States and Israel are acting in a coordinated and unified manner, and Trump and Netanyahu speak by phone every day. Each side has its own set of personal goals, and everyone is doing their part to win this war. But on the 19th day of the war, the goals of the two allies began to differ drastically. For example, the United States is not thrilled that Israel struck Iran's oil storage facilities. The United States does not agree with Israel's attempts to draw the Kurds into this war, nor with the widespread elimination of Iranian regime officials. And now the White House is sounding the alarm. If the goals of the war for the United States and Israel are different, then how can victory be achieved, and when should the end of this war be declared? And there is a risk that the United States will withdraw from the war much earlier than Israel achieves its goals. And today, Axios revealed the behind-the-scenes details of the beginning of the split between the positions of Trump and Netanyahu. My name is Alexi Pichi. Let's discuss this topic together. But before we start, I ask you to subscribe to this channel, like the video, leave any comment under this video, and be sure to subscribe to my Telegram channel. The Pichi News channel, the link is in the description of this video, where we publish breaking news as it comes in. So today Axios writes that, according to their information, President Donald Trump and Bibi Netanyahu have been communicating almost every day since the beginning of the war. Trump told Axios that they work together perfectly and there are absolutely no problems. Everything runs smoothly like clockwork. However, American officials understand that the goals of the two countries and their willingness to take risks may diverge as the war continues, which has already lasted. This is the 20th day. According to the publication, several American officials describe Trump as the most decisive person in the White House when it comes to starting a war against Iran. In addition, he seems to share Netanyahu's maximalist goals more than many of his aides do. Officials in Washington and Jerusalem and Tehran understand perfectly well that any split between allies could determine the outcome of the war, and that's where the problem lies. 3 of President Trump's advisors told Axios that they believe he will want to end major operations sooner than Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu would. However, at this stage of the war, it should be acknowledged that the relationship between Trump and Netanyahu is currently closer than ever, and the crisis in the Strait of Hormuz makes it unlikely that the US will try to exit the war anytime soon. Overall, American and Israeli military and intelligence services are acting in coordination even though their goals differ. While the United States of America is focused almost exclusively on military objectives, meaning they are striking military targets, Israel is targeting the elimination of high-ranking officials and is taking other steps aimed at laying the groundwork for regime change. For example, creating conditions for Iranians to protest in the streets again. That is, each side has its own objectives, and they are carrying them out in a coordinated manner. High-ranking American officials state that although Trump sees regime change in Tehran as a bonus, he intends to end the war once his main military objectives are achieved. The destruction of Iran's missile program, nuclear program, navy, and funding through intermediaries. And at this stage, if this can be achieved, Trump is ready to wrap things up and withdraw from this war. But Netanyahu has completely different goals here. And the White House admits that the US as a whole doesn't really care whether they manage to get rid of the regime or somehow come to an agreement with it, make a deal, and so on. For the US, it's not important, but for Israel, it's very important to completely eliminate it. And here is a clear example of disagreement. At the beginning of the military operation, Israel focused on decapitating the Iranian leadership, while the US focused on striking Iran's bases with missiles and drones. As of today, Israel continues to carry out a wider range of operations than the US. Israeli intelligence Mossad even tried to provoke a ground invasion by Iranian Kurds from northern Iraq, although later the US said they did not want this. The only public and obvious point of friction in more than 2 weeks of war was Israel's strike on Iranian oil storage facilities. For the US, stabilizing the global oil market is now a higher priority than it is for Israel. Because Israel is destroying the regime while Trump allows that same regime to sell oil. to the external market, which actually prolongs the life of that regime. If you missed the news, I discussed it yesterday. Today I can remind you that the U.S. Secretary of the Treasury, Scott Bessent, admitted that yes, Iran continues to trade oil. The American military sees this but does not interfere. He says we are quite satisfied that tankers with Iranian oil leave the Strait of Hormuz and continue on towards China. He says we are fine with that. He says the tankers are moving and that in wartime this seems very strange. If you look at the public side, Trump and Netanyahu look like inseparable friends. The 12-day war in June of last year significantly strengthened their relationship. Trump considered this war a great success and highly praised Netanyahu's actions. After the war, Trump also began his ongoing campaign to pardon Netanyahu and stop his corruption trial. War, Trump, pardon of Netanyahu, and stopping his corruption trial. And here is an interesting episode. Although some analysts, including members of the American president's team, questioned Israel's decision to assassinate the head of Iranian security service, Ali Larijani, on Tuesday, claiming that he was more inclined than other high-ranking Iranians to reach a peace agreement with the United States, Trump expressed satisfaction. He says, "Great, they took him out, well done." Netanyahu made it clear that this is not all. He even showed the U.S. ambassador to Israel, Mike Huckabee, a punch card that he always carries with him, listing Iranian leaders who have been killed by Israel or whom Israel intends to kill in the near future. And he sort of marks on it who has already been eliminated and who has not yet. In the end, Donald Trump himself admitted that Israel's goals might, as he put it, be a little different from his own. Here's the quote. "You know, they're over there and we're very far away, so it makes sense." European officials also stated that U.S. Secretary of State Marco Rubio, in several phone conversations with his European counterparts, acknowledged the existence of differences in the goals of the U.S. and Israel. Last week, at a press conference, Secretary of Defense Pete Hegseth was asked whether Iran would have to meet the demands of both the U.S. and Israel to end the war. And he replied that the decision would be made exclusively by the United States of America. Quote, "Our goals are our goals. We will determine the pace of achieving them ourselves." But here's a big question. If the United States of America decides that it has already achieved its goals and withdraws from the war before Israel achieves its goals, can this be called a victory in this war? And if so, whose victory would it be? Because Israel will not achieve its goals. And this could trigger a very complicated process of mutual accusations where the war seems to be over, but for some it still won't be finished. I'll leave it at that. Share your opinions and conclusions in the comments below this episode. Subscribe to the channel, hit the bell, and don't forget to like. Also, if you found this episode interesting and useful, I would appreciate any financial support from you. It will help our channel grow. You can do this through donations, subscriptions, or sponsorship on YouTube. All the links and details on how to do this are in the description of this video, or you can use the QR code on your screens. That's all for now. Take care. Goodbye, everyone.